The biggest mistake that I think a lot of organizations make is thinking that AI is like a product deployment and not an operational model shift. Business needs to be engaged and it needs to be a shift in the operating model.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're using machine speed to amplify an inefficient process or one that can be done differently with AI. Doesn't mean better, it means different. And it means a lot of times the outcome is better and faster.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Impact Exchange. Today I'm joined by Nathan Reynolds, co founder of Hypershift and Hypershift Labs, companies helping enterprise modernize infrastructure, adopt AI more meaningfully, and rethink how technology actually drives business outcomes. Nathan has spent years in enterprise infrastructure and consulting, previously built and exited a company, and is now operating at the intersection of cloud, AI, and the enterprise transformation. Nathan, really excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And honestly, Nathan, one thing I appreciated from our previous conversation was how practical your perspective is around AI. A lot of conversations online are very hype driven right now, but your focus seems very much around outcomes, the workflow design, and realistic enterprise adoption. So let's unpack that today.
Sure.
And I would love to start with your journey, Nathan.
Okay.
Yeah. What was your background? How you started this hypershift?
It's a great question. Yeah. We started Hypershift because there's a constant void in the market where enterprises have specific internal capability that can keep the lights on. They are capable of innovating and know their business very well, but they need somebody to help them transition between ideas and operational realities, right? And when the businesses are under pressure from competitors, economic pressure, pressure to innovate faster, an outside set of hands is often useful to enable rapid change and to do so without the encumbrance of day to day operations and politics. So we started the company to continue to help organizations transform rapidly and do so independent of internal politics, policies, and limitations.
Certainly. And Nathan, you mentioned previously also your first company was operatingly heavily on switches, server, storage. But now the market has shifted fundamentally towards hyperscalers and cloud consumption. Did you
Absolutely.
see that transition coming early, or did customer behavior gradually force that evolution?
That's a subjective. I have a subjective answer. Around 2012, we started to notice that if you were in the data center architecture and build business, a lot more of the projects that we would do were just not coming down the pipeline the way they used to.
Mm.
And upon examination, we found these guys up in Seattle who had taken what were basically web technologies for e-commerce and similar use cases and had adapted them for corporate use. That was really the first kind of light bulb moment for me. And I guarantee I was not very early in that. Other people got that much earlier than I did. But it did lead to a transition out of the data center business. And I say that loosely. We still do data center work at my
Mhm.
company. We still build uh, server environments. We still build hyperscale compute environments and complex data center networks. There are time and a place for those still in this world, but it is much more of a hybrid environment now where some workloads are better suited for the cloud and maybe some workloads that are compute intensive and static and those workloads in some cases or they just need to be from a proximity perspective very close to data. Those are
Mhm.
still data center workloads from what we see in our client base.
Hypershift is definitely a second generation evolution of your first company, but you're still carrying that infrastructure foundation behind all this, but you're going with the market with cloud, AI, software.
the
And I'm
market
sure that has been your intention from day one.
the market dictates where you go, right? You
Mhm.
need to be what they always say, skates are where the puck is going, not where the puck is. Right? Is the old hockey axiom. So yeah, you know, we see a world where hyperscalers continue to grow. We see mild repatriation of workloads in certain use cases, but it's certainly not the overarching trend. We are engaged very heavily with a lot of OEM manufacturers who I think would love to see the data center reborn. And I think in some cases those, there are
Still,
workloads that need to go in a data center, but
yes.
on the whole, organizations are moving to the economics of the
Mm,
shared model of the hyperscalers.
great. Yeah. And I love to ask this part based on our earlier chat. You moved from intense scaling environments into living near the beach in Florida while
Yeah.
still building companies. So, has your mindset as a founder changed over the years?
Maybe a little bit. I've been a founder for 20 years at this point, and companies have natural stages, right? And we're in an early stage at Hypershift, one that probably would, in a prior life, would chain you to a desk for 12 to 16 hours a day. And, you know, we, I built this company not as a quality of life company, right? A lot of founders jokingly chide each other about that, but our employees need to be happy, our customers need to be happy, and you could still work. I work very hard from the beach a lot of
Right.
days, but my view is fantastic in doing it. And an occasional nature break with my dogs, or just a quick walk, helps to reset in a way that living in an urban jungle does not.
Certainly, that's the case. Shifting gears to your customers, like you said, making customers happy, especially when we talk about today enterprise technology companies, they say and they hear often by people around their leaders that go figure out AI, but
hmm
often without a clear strategy behind it. So, what does that look like from your side working with enterprises?
The biggest mistake that I think a lot of organizations make is thinking that AI is like a product deployment and not an operational model shift. So we work with a lot of folks in IT broadly who've been asked by the board and the C-suite to implement AI, right? Find opportunities for AI. And we've got a workshop that we offer to our customers at no cost that helps them find those opportunities, but they don't happen inside of IT or in your technology division by themselves. Business needs to be engaged, and it needs to be a shift in the operating model.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're using computer or machine speed to amplify what is likely an inefficient process, or one that can be done differently with AI. Doesn't mean better; it means different, and it means a lot of times the outcome is better and faster. I see AI as more augmentation to businesses than replacement of entire business models. I do subscribe to the idea that all of I believe there will be, societal shift and displacement of jobs, but I think it will create more jobs than it
Yes.
displaces. And I believe that the doom and gloom that you hear coming out of Silicon Valley is largely marketing, right? To pretend like their models are so powerful, they're going to displace all humans, right? I think that's how you raise money when you look at multiples that are in the hundreds of 100x revenue and stuff like that. I think that's how you do it. I don't think it's doom and gloom. I think business model transformation is definitely there, but I also think that it frees humans up to do things that humans are better at. And I think you've got to stitch it all together that way. Otherwise, you're just, being a developer and modifying your code to query an API is not that's not embracing AI. I don't know what that is. That's AI washing an application. You really need to look at outcomes, and you've got to look at workflows that provide value to the business, not just an inefficient workflow that runs faster. You need an efficient workflow that gets the job done in the right way and provides the best experience for the organization and its customers.
With the right outcomes. No, we'll come back to this API, shift that you just highlighted. But going back to one thing you also said was powerful, that half of the companies are benefiting from AI and half are not. What separates those two groups?
I think clarity on implementation and
Mhm.
modification of business process. If you're just bolting into business processes, it's really difficult to measure return. It's very difficult to measure impact, right? But if you were looking at it from an outcome based perspective, and you look at the amount of time it takes to produce your work product and what it costs to produce your work product, that is the right approach. That's where you start from. Adding AI, because I talk to a million people in this position, our board says we've got to implement AI. We need to report that we are implementing AI. We don't know where to implement it. We know it's possible, right? But we have too many things going on at the same time. We need some outside perspective. Where are the easy wins, right? Where can I engage and go back and demonstrate that we are using the tools available to us, tell a good story and get some benefit? That that is a conversation we're having often.
No, I love that distinction. Just not just simply adding APIs versus redesigning the workflows and getting that clarity on the outcome and building the story. So, can you explain the difference for listeners? Because I think many companies confuse this with AI augmentation with actual transformation
Right.
that's happening.
That's a great question. So I'll start with augmentation. Augmentation is very easy. Augmentation is we have this process, right? It routes between three different people. It goes from person A to B. Person B makes a determination, right? Decision support system, something. And then we route it somewhere else. Can we replace a step with AI, right? That's
Mm.
augmentation. Change is we're working with I'm working with a law firm that is looking to analyze all prior case law in their specific domain and determine rapidly which attorney it should route to and what the likely outcomes of the case are or the matter specifically based on the inputs, right? So that is a change of business process for a law firm where they're looking at building agents that enable matter intake, identify the appropriate attorney to handle it based on merits that maybe another person wouldn't pick up, right? Nuance of the case or the matter or the complaint or whatever that is and route it. So that's a business process change. They look similar, but they're not. One is a different way of doing business. Another project we did was for a real estate firm that, they're in the business of, building funds, finding properties, syndicating the fund across numerous properties and looking at a million deals, looking at, existing financials, real estate market, stuff like that. Those are all people process, right? That is expertise, that is, you know, that is my grandfather with gray hair looking at something saying, I know this market 50 years, I can tell you. Well, data tells a better story sometimes. And right. So the data is faster and tells a better story. Um,
And rightly said, I think these are the things which markets or companies are getting wrong. It's not just simply install AI and, productivity will magically improve. It's
mhm.
the reality is much more complex operationally, right? It's a process that goes behind and which Hypershift is, driving that, with the outcomes in mind. So do you
Yeah.
think that most companies today are actually prepared for AI, structurally prepared?
Uh, Not a chance. Not a chance. Most companies struggle with a few things. We struggle first with outcome. What is the outcome I want,
Okay.
right? Finding it. AI itself is not an outcome. Number two, what data do I need to get that outcome, right? To enable the transformative technology that is AI. And number three, who should have access to it? Is it overshared or undershared? Right. And do I create more risk and liability by moving into this new model? Those three things typically are, in my opinion, that's what is driving AI hesitancy in the enterprise is that they don't have clarity across those three items.
Yeah. And I think that's the reason you started Hypershift Labs. Tell us more about that decision. What led
Absolutely.
you?
Well, you know, when AI is a really valuable tool, what we're finding is that a lot of organizations were engaged in experimentation and not necessarily outcome driven prototyping or just development, right? A lot of organizations, there's some easy wins, right? Hypershift Labs is not here to build Claude into VS Code and teach your developers how to use that. We are not here to show you the easy use cases. What we've done with Hypershift Labs over the last year are engage in complex projects that require a deep understanding of business process, data pipelines, workflows, and how to ultimately engineer a workflow that is both efficient and brings value to the enterprise. That is not what we're seeing in most AI pilots. So it was built to deliver a set of services that are uncommon to the market today to enable better conversations around business outcomes and then bring people with actual expertise to bear on those projects and to rapidly prototype. We do a 6-week concept of prototype, production prototype, functional deployed engagement that we've done and across industries, across disciplines, across business processes. We partnered up partnered up with a guy who ran a consulting practice, built a joint venture with them, and they've been in machine learning space for more than 15 years before AI was called AI. So
Hmm.
we got a deep bench there that we've kind of put up and built that joint venture with, and what we're able to do inside of these 6-week prototype engagements is phenomenal.
Awesome. And how is the buyer different between traditional infrastructure consulting versus this AI transformation engagements? How are you seeing that?
It's typically business driven, right? So if I
Oh,
look at it's what side of the line I live on the P&L, am I on the revenue side or am I on the expense side? Right? If you think about traditionally enterprise tech, we are partnered more with the CIO's office, right? We are to enablement technology, compliance, GRC, things like that. When we start talking about AI transformation, we are typically in the CTO's office where we're looking at ways to enhance the business or to grow revenues. It's very AI projects are not they're not fantastic cost-cutting measures, right? Unless you have an extremely human-intensive process that is grossly
yeah.
inefficient and full of errors, that's a good use case. However, just cutting workforce or just making something go faster is not necessarily a great use of the technology. It's very hard to measure your return, and they tend to spin off the rails pretty quick.
Wow. Yeah. And with Hypershift Labs, you mentioned about the partnership. How did that partnership come together? And what you realize, that enterprise needed that perhaps this traditional IT consulting alone wouldn't solve, until this partnership happens.
Well, I think it's a couple things. Partnership came about. We were introduced by a mutual client. Rick and his firm were doing some AI work, and we were providing some core infrastructure underneath that. Right, so it was basically an AI factory that we were building physically in a
Mhm.
data center to support that. We became adjacent in the project, and through a series of conversations, we built a friendship and a partnership that enabled us to go to market on several other projects jointly and
Cool.
ultimately cement the relationship in the joint venture.
And when companies approach Hypershift Labs today, what are
Mhm.
they actually asking for? Is it Copilot, workflow automation, engineering, readiness?
It's almost always
Where's the
workflow
Mhm.
automation. We do some Copilot work. That is like I hate to say Copilot's very easy at this point. It's got a lot of bad press and like publicly. Just everyone and we actually run an ad that says Copilot sucks because you did it wrong. Run an ad on social with that, and that gets a ton of inbound because the reality is Copilot can be done really well. You can connect it to MCP servers. You can use Microsoft Graph and the security models to enable access to outside applications and all manner of AI type workflows via Copilot. What most companies do when they get it wrong is they activate it and they expect it to work out of the box. And it doesn't. It's great at rewriting your emails. You know, we have some great people on staff here that speak 3 and 4 languages, and sometimes, if English isn't your first language, right, tone is hard to master, right? English is one of the harder languages, as I'm told. I'm a native speaker, but, we use Copilot here to help people make sure that they get the tone and message that they want in an email. That works out of the box, right? But if you want to expand upon that, right? If you want to enable your sales team to create a sales pitch or a pitch deck or your project team to give a customer update and you want to do it natively with Copilot with no training, good luck.
Yeah, and Copilot, yeah, like you said, is one of the ask, but where's the biggest demand area? Is it data engineering, AI readiness, or still at Copilot stage? Where are you
Uh,
seeing for Hypershift Labs that the market is
Biggest
asking?
demand is building data pipelines, data engineering, and then building complex RAG applications that use an LLM to enable smarter decision making inside of organizations.
Yeah.
Big, in RAG, I mean, if everyone doesn't know what RAG is, it's retrieval augmented generation,
Yes.
right? And it is, the context window in your LLM is not big enough to ingest your entire library in most cases. And that's why you need RAG. Most of the work that we're doing is there. We do some computer vision stuff that's pretty interesting in the medical space. Like we can do things like analyze patient emotion, especially when it comes to like orthopedics or like physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But the RAG stuff is the bread and butter right now.
Yeah, it's a wide range, right? And drag as well, like you mentioned.
Mhm. Correct,
Yeah. And
correct.
then one thing you have shared about your perspective is that don't seem to approach AI from like, hey, there is a cool model. Instead, what business outcome are we solving?
Sure.
Why is that distinction so important right now, at this point when everybody's talking about AI?
I think the distinction is important because you're probably overwhelmed with models and tools like me. I get every newsletter too. I have 65 tabs open of the newest application or the newest app that came out last week, and I want to play with it and try it.
Mhm.
And I find that I've got to shut that noise down and focus on objectives, right? Otherwise, and I feel like, we all get shiny object syndrome. So there's a new shiny object in AI today, and it will be another model tomorrow. And Like Mythos was all the rage of conversation 3 weeks ago. And
Yeah.
then OpenAI dropped GPT, I think was it 5.4? I think it was
Yeah.
5.4. And I saw a test where, we were concerned that Mythos was going to break the cybersecurity world. And then, GPT 5.4 in some of the tests I saw, ran 95% similar success rates to the same types of problems as Mythos. And you're like, probably wasn't the end of the world, was it?
But looking at this fast pace, and looking ahead 3 to 5 years, where do you think the enterprise infrastructure and AI adoption are headed?
Who knows?
That's the correct answer.
Yeah, I don't, I think it's pontificating. I think the flywheel is going to spin faster. And I think we're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable if our position in life is that we as technologists, we need to have a crystal ball. We don't have it anymore.
Mm.
A lot of this is taking on a life of its own. And I think we've got to stay in front of it and we've got to help organizations make smart decisions and use the technology that's available without getting too distracted by the latest X or Y model or anything that's going to, whatever comes down the pike.
And here lies your piece of advice. What would you tell founders? Like you mentioned, we know AI matters, but honestly don't know where to begin, where they should focus right now.
New founders should focus on, that's a great question. If I were a new founder today, I would use AI to automate as much as possible, but not forget the human aspect of what we do. Um, I got my first AI cold call like last week, and it was horrible. It was so organizations are automating as much as possible using AI, and while it's achievable, I detected a little bit of delay in the voice response, and I just asked it if it was a person or an AI, and it told me it was an AI agent. And I thought that was 80% as good as a human, and I still
Wow.
hung up on it. So don't
It's
forget
like
to
human in the loop, right?
keep a human in
Okay.
the loop for sure.
And you mentioned that you are investing into doing this thought leadership content, podcast, founder visibility. Why do you think it matters more now?
I think the way that we consume information and make decisions is changing. I think if you look at the technology market 15 years ago, we as channel partners and implementators and consultants were a gatekeeper to information. And that's no longer the case, right? I don't need to, you can run an entire organization without ever working with a company like mine. Uh, we need to be out there telling our story, providing value, right? We have to provide real value, not like my value can't just be that I'm a gatekeeper of information. Right? That's not good enough, right? I have to be
Totally.
able to bring you information to help you. I tell our customers, prospects, like information is free and implementation costs money. But we are very much in the business of trying to help people make smart decisions. And we believe that doing the right thing and empowering them with information, more people choose to work with us than not.
Yeah. No, I love that part. The visibility is even more needed at this time because information is free. And you have built businesses through relationships and trust over many years. What's changed most about enterprise go to market today compared to, 5, 10 years ago?
It's the fact that 70% of the buyer's journey is completed before you ever have your first conversation.
Wow.
And that's why visibility is important. That's why information is important. We've changed our go to market. We have a trove of free resources on our website, everything from how to implement Copilot to Microsoft Intune to AI readiness checklists. We've got vendor sponsored programs in place that allow us to come in and do not just very basic, but very functional assessments for customers
Mhm.
at no cost, right? We've got a lot of vendor funding to do things like that. So we are engaged in making decisions as easy as possible for our customers and helping shine a light on the dark corners of the environment or the technology that might give them, the clarity they need to move forward.
That's very much needed. Thank you, Nathan. And before we wrap up, let's do a rapid fire, a quick
Okay,
one here. I'll
let's go.
ask questions and you have to just say a one word answer.
One word, maybe
Yes. One AI tool you personally use the most.
Claude.
Biggest misconception about enterprise AI.
Tools do not equal systems.
Not the systems. Tools is not equal to systems.
Mhm.
Build or buy.
I would have said buy, but Claude Code makes me say build. It depends on the complexity, but yeah, still do both.
Wonderful. Cloud or on prem.
Yes.
One industry AI will disrupt fastest.
Hopefully the data brokers that keep selling my information, but maybe not in the right direction.
One thing founders should stop doing with AI.
Build yourself. Stop spending your nights building software if somebody can do that job better and you can steer the ship in the right direction.
Great. Beach or mountains?
Oh, beach, for sure.
One word to describe the future of enterprise technology.
Consumer.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nathan. This was such a valuable conversation. I learned a lot about not just Hypershift, but Hypershift Labs, and all the very best to you. And I think what makes your perspective unique is what you're bridging with legacy infrastructure to cloud modernization to AI adoption, but keeping the real business outcomes in mind. And without getting lost in the noise and the hype that surrounds AI right now.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly valuable for our founders and CIOs and operators and enterprise leader listening today. But before we go, where can listeners learn more about you, Hypershift Labs?
Very easy. Hypershift.com, hypershiftlabs.com. Links to our social media, LinkedIn, everything are located there. An easy Nate.Reynolds at hypershift.com. I answer every email. I still work day in and day out with our clients, our business partners, and I love random inbound and interesting conversations.
Thank you. Thank you, Nate.